Project 2025, private training video, left-wing code words and language. Not this again. I hadn't seen any of it. We haven't even watched this. You're nuts. This is leaked by ProPublica from, what was the guy's name? Like the pseudonym he used? It was like Arnold or something. Harold. It's hilarious.
Hi, I'm Katie Sullivan, and just a normal American woman, but
Former acting assistant attorney general, Office of Justice Programs at the U.S. Department of Justice. I'm assuming this is all Trump administration shit. I'm just a normal American woman.
to the left, that makes me a cisgendered ethno-imperialist.
Oh boy. Oh my god. Okay. Just being normal makes you that? Hang on. Let's start this over. I'm having a hard time already.
I'm Katie Sullivan, and just a normal American.
Listen, I thought this was going to be like, maybe it will still be. I thought it was going to be like procedure and here's how you fill out these forms and the kind of rhetoric you got to use on the campaign trail that's like serious. Not immediately. Oh god. I didn't think it would be this culture war pilled.
Hi, I'm Katie Sullivan, and just a normal American woman. But to the left, that makes me a cisgendered ethno-imperialist birthing person with pronouns she, her.
The left gave you those pronouns? I'm sorry. You actually are choosing those right now.
Words like that
with a bonus hole.
That are quite a mouthful, and it's one America needs to spit out before we choke on it.
It's a mouthful.
In the eyes of many in the world,
I've seen this intro already in different, on the Project 2025 website, and I love that it says the conservative movement presents, just like the whole movement. You know it. From the inventors of racism, Jim Crow, segregation, anti-miscegenation law.
this every 4 year
They are literally a monolith.
ceremony we accept as
Please stop streaming when I'm at work. My schedule should always be accounted for.
Listen to me while you're at work.
normal is
Problem
nothing
solved.
less than a miracle.
In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving.
Only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger.
This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper.
Whether we go forward together with courage or turn back to policies that weakened our economy, diminished our leadership in the world, America's future will be in your hands.
The Presidential Transition Project. They put MLK in this? Yeah, dude. He was a conservative. I don't know. Hidden Meanings, The Monsters in the Attic. Bro, did Jordan Peterson write this? Like Dragon of Chaos in your attic?
Bethany, are your children afraid of monsters in the attic or under the bed?
Yeah, they have been, but we always tell them that they do not exist.
What is this porn acting? We always tell them they do not exist.
Today we have news. There are monsters in Uncle Sam's attic.
It's the words, phrases, definitions that are used, which may look like one thing, but absolutely mean another. And it is scary.
During this training, we will identify the problem, discuss examples from our time in the federal government, as well as the 5 cross-cutting principles of the current administration.
This is literally giving me employee training flashbacks.
We'll teach you how to unwind the words and phrases that have been so artfully layered into every document in the federal government. You can do this in any role at any level of seniority. This training will prepare you.
What the fuck are we watching? This is Project 2025. This is what they're trying to teach political appointees and how they're trying to have like staffers be trained in the Republican Party. I'm sure they're already using these to some degree. If it's not these actual things, it's something similar.
To make changes and fast. The left continually pivots and assaults definitions and phrases. They twist words and phrases to support subconscious acceptance of a philosophy that was rejected or is against the grain of human existence, like, what is a woman? Perhaps the most effective tool the left wields is their ability to engage in constant subliminal advertising through their narrative, words, and phrases.
Why is the camera moving? The camera's moving away. It's running away. Do they have it on like a dolly? Why? They should have just got a closer shot of this woman. This shot is so awkward.
Marxism became socialism, then democratic socialism, and is now represented by the terms social justice and equity.
Now?
This is perhaps the most scary of all.
Katie, what brings to mind is the
So Marxism, socialism, equity. That's like the most social justice, equity. That's the scariest one.
quote, "He who controls the language rules the world." It's attributed to Joseph Stalin and other tyrants. And George Orwell stated, "He who controls language controls culture." Even more, Hitler and others lived by the creed. If you repeat a lie often enough, people will believe it. Without doubt,
Hitler and others. And the left is just like that.
it's true. Language is a powerful and often controlling tool.
Conservatives don't lie.
Career bureaucrats and the left are also using language to change culture and gain more and more authority, thereby upsetting the balance of power envisioned by our founding fathers. This, in essence, weaponized language against the American people.
This training is vital to you as a political appointee. If there's one thing you take from this training, it is to know when you start your job as a political appointee, every single word, phrase, and acronym must be vetted, and you must determine what implications every word has before publishing or moving forward with any official or internal document.
That's right.
All right. So now
I'm going undercover. I'm a Republican operative.
that we have identified the problem, let's give the viewers a taste
Direct headshot. I need to test the wokeness of this. I need to see if this has DEI, which I think it might.
of what we saw in the
I
Trump
think I see
administration.
DEI in this.
Bethany and I were both part of a coordinated effort in the Trump administration focused on trying to take back hijacked language and missions across the United States government and even at our engagements in the United Nations. From our experiences, we will teach you how to identify the left's progressive
Let's go.
language, scrutinize career staff compositions for dangerous language,
Okay.
and how to combat their manipulative efforts, ensuring clarity of definition and conservative intention. Bethany and I are going to give you some examples of what we mean by this need to always
so
ensure
barred out,
clarity.
man.
But
They're like pre-2020 or this is like pre-vice presidency Kamala Harris. Wheels on the bus go round and round. Can the Heritage Foundation take it down? I don't think they want to, but maybe.
But in no way are we able to foresee the future and anticipate how the progressive left will continue to co-opt.
Is she like CG? What is up with her? What's going on here? I'm freaking out looking at her face.
Even more words and definitions. We can tell you the words and phrases.
Her eyes look like they're painted on the glasses. You know what I mean? It's like fucking me up. And then her mouth looks like pasted on.
Being used today, but by the time you enter the administration, these examples may be obsolete. This will help you spot
And then she sounds like AI.
crucial issue areas to pay close attention to. We do not know what they will be calling men and women by the time you begin your tenure with the administration.
We
The left
don't
is
know what... Dude, she can't even deliver it right. This is miserable. We don't know what they'll be calling women by the time you're in the political appointment.
trying to dismantle America and rebuild it in their own image by using the art of deception, and words and definitions are their weapon of choice. Remember, words change culture. Bethany, with your extensive experience with both domestic and international policy issues, and
There's too much light on the pale woman, and she's like kind of glowing. She's like the exposure is too high. It's like The contrast is hurting my eyes.
And in light of your role in
It's
in
not like
leadership
an even exposure here at all.
positions at USAID, can you walk us
The
through some
pale woman.
examples of how the left uses words, weaponizes really, words and definitions? And if you could do that in a context of the cross-cutting issues that are identified in the mandate for leadership.
In 2025, yeah.
And really,
Project
as we
25.
understand, the cross-cutting issues were identified because they are the pillars of the Biden administration. And so they've been layered into virtually every document in the federal government. If you could walk us through some of those examples,
oh my
I think
God.
it would
What? That was like such a crazy question. It was so long.
be incredibly helpful.
I'd be happy to, absolutely. The 5 topic areas for today's discussion are centered on women, children, and family.
Let's go. How do we talk about
environment.
women? This is I like, okay, are we talking yet? Like, we're just all we've seen are just segments and what we will learn. Does it just keep doing this? I'm going insane. It's just been 10 minutes. In this video, we will go over the following segments. It just keeps talking about more segments.
Rights and border security, the gender cult,
Oh no!
and equity. The first
Any members of
topic,
the
when
gender cult here? Type 1 in the chat if you're a member of the gender cult.
women, children, and family. I worked on international issues and very closely followed the language presented at the United Nations. And I saw up close and personal how this indeed is true. Language
This someone asked if this was hacked or leaked by the furries. No, it was leaked by Robert. It was a man named Robert.
is used
That's
to
the name
control
he used. It
culture.
was just Robert.
I'll never forget a conversation I had with the chief of staff at USAID. We are trying to provide alternative language for the highly controversial phrase comprehensive sexuality education, or CSE, which at the United Nations had come to mean not just typical sex education, but instead had been morphed into teaching and normalizing sex at very early ages, even as young as preschool, and for girls who became pregnant, that abortion was a preferable method of birth control.
Yeah, encouraging sex at preschool age? Like, no. Teaching it, maybe. But, like, you're talking about, like, anatomy, probably, at that point. Not, like, actual sex. Just, like, reproductive organs. That's, like, I guarantee it's not even that. Like, harm prevention.
Back to the conversation with the chief of staff. He suggested several alternatives, but each time I told him that, unfortunately, his recommended edit was also interpreted as CSE. Frustrated, he vented, "They have literally co-opted the English language." And it was at that moment
When you're stupid. Dude, they're using words to, like, have meaning. When I say words, it doesn't mean anything. You just look like an idiot. I'm sorry.
that I realized that the progressive left is controlling the language, redefining definitions, and by doing so, are ruling the world. On a positive note, despite all the angst that we did succeed on that negotiation. DevX published an article with the headline, "No Mention of Reproductive Rights in Declarations Out of G7 Development Ministerial." You can read more about this in the course materials section.
Okay, so she was involved in, like, a G7 summit and, like, made sure that there was no mention of birth control. Yeah, cool, bitch. You suck ass. What, like, it's literally just a symbolic thing. You're just, like, asshole. Like, you are asshole. I don't know what else to say. And this is, like, the kind of shit that they're training you to do. Just represent America as the most ghoulish hogs on the international level, please.
Now, let's talk about the word abortion. The left got very creative years ago and started using different words to make abortion sound a little less like murder.
Maybe because it's not. Maybe it doesn't sound like it when they use those words because that's not what it is.
For example, sexual...
Yeah, why was it never called murder before?
and reproductive health, reproductive rights, sexual and reproductive health services, reproductive health services, sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights.
These are all woke terms.
Sexual and reproductive health and rights. All of these include abortion. For years, we knew that the terms above that I just mentioned had been used and that they were code for abortion. The left and the career bureaucrats at state and USAID told us, oh, no, no, no. But then when I was negotiating with Canada for the G7 Development Ministerial, I said, well, can we just use these terms and add that does not include abortion? And their response was telling. They said, what? But it does include abortion. Even with that admission, I had a difficult time convincing political appointees that these terms were co-opted.
How can you have reproductive rights that don't include abortion? What are the rights then? You don't. You have a mandate to reproduce, not a right to choose. Like, that's what, like, and she's like, and I was talking to a Canadian delegation for the G7 Ministerial, and they said it included abortion. That's telling. It's like, what the fuck? Yeah, everyone in the room looked at you like an idiot asshole, and that's telling to you. This is the Matt Walsh strategy. His whole, like, movie where he goes in and he sits down and he's like, oh, I'm Steve. And everyone's like, we know you're Matt Walsh. Why are you lying? And he's like, epic troll. They're like, get out of here, you freak, you fucking weirdo. He's like, yeah, you're mad. She's just doing that at the UN or whatever. G7 Ministerial, whatever the fuck that is. Bozo conference. Bullshit fucking busy work. This is so insane. Fake job. For real. Like, on every level. Ugh.
Example hits closer to home and highlights how imperative it is for political appointees to ensure definitions are correct and explicitly followed. 3 days after President Trump took office on January 20th, 2017, he issued a presidential memorandum regarding the Mexico City policy. This became known as the Protecting Life and Global Health Assistance Policy, or the expanded Mexico City policy. When I arrived at USAID in June 2017, I was the first political appointee in a bureau.
So she worked for USAID.
And the sixth political appointee in the building. Despite President Trump issuing a presidential memorandum at the very onset of his administration to immediately change course and to protect life, even months later, his guidance was ignored. I remember hearing careers refer to this policy and even seeing documents that referred to it as the global gag order. I immediately told the career staff that we do not refer to it as the global gag order, but instead appropriately as the Protecting Life and Global Health Assistance policy. To some, it may seem inconsequential, but it actually was completely undermining the president and the American people who had elected President Trump. So opposed to this policy change, the left actually started a new organization and an international movement called She Decides, which invited NGOs and other foreign governments to join and actively promote abortion services and advocacy, essentially joining together to try to counter what the Trump administration was doing to protect life. Language.
Oh, come on, man. Come on. I just want to get through this. This is crazy, by the way. I just can't. She's like getting mad that someone like it was offensive to Trump by proxy or something with like referring to legislation a certain way. Like, this is so like semantics focused. It's not even a culture war right now. This is just like diplomatic shit.
Bethany, it's incredible how the left is able to make killing children and babies a pro-movement.
Give Ronin dinner but put on something else than the scary woman.
Killing children and babies. Donald Trump is fine with it as long as it's up to the states. So what? So what? Who are you going to vote for, bitch? Who's saving your kids? Come on. Tell me, asshole. Piece of shit. I mean, the Heritage Foundation wants a nationwide abortion ban. They do. And this is why, like, Donald Trump will probably cave to them. Because what conservative wouldn't make that natural conclusion after the Dobbs decision?
I mean, their narrative is just incredible and so opposite of what the reality of the situation is. We see that also with environment, right? So I remember when I was in school.
Like, it's so awesome that Roe v. Wade was overturned. Trigger laws went into effect. More abortion bans happened since then. And yet, they have still been fucking pedal to the metal. They are murdering babies at 9 months post-birth, killing children. Like, I'm sorry, when does this fucking end? Like, that's how you call for a national ban. That's like the language that you use.
Well,
nuts.
In elementary school, we were taught that we were all going to be frozen over by an ice age, and of course, this was terrifying.
What? That's what climate change is to these people.
And then in the 80s, it was acid rain. We were all going to die from the acid rain. And then it moved to global warming, which I think, you know, most of the people watching this tape will remember. That was during the Obama administration.
Yes.
And then science comes along and disproves the global warming theory. And
yeah, science invented in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected.
in large part, and we have one of the most
it owned Obama. Science comes along and owns Obama.
frigid winters ever known.
And that's
then
good.
The next thing you know, they're calling it climate change.
Yeah, they call it global warming, and then it get too cold, and now they call it climate change because it get too cold and get too hot. This doesn't make sense to me. Climate change get cold, global warming get cold, climate change get hot and cold. I don't know. I don't get it. Now I'm just confused. So that must mean they're wrong because I don't understand. Only two genders, cold or hot, global climate change, global warming.
Now, I always understood that climate change meant seasons. Our climate does change.
Oh. Ha. Whew. What was she? Assistant Attorney General? Sick, man. Sick.
All the time. But of course, that's not what's meant by the left. What do you think about all of about the left's words and definitions in the environment?
It's a great point, Katie. They don't stop. Climate change, allegedly, is everywhere. And if the American people elect a conservative president, his administration will have to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere. And according to our intelligence community, the #1 threat facing our country today is, drumroll, climate change. Not Russia, not China, not AI, climate change. This shows how the federal government is all in on this issue. And climate change activists wield a lot of power. This is an issue to pay attention to as it has infiltrated every part of the federal government. Now, when I think of climate change, I immediately think of population control.
I'm dying. Not Russia, China, AI, Hamas. Now, when I think of climate change, I think population control. I'm brain dead, but pay no attention to that fact. I mean, conservatives have a war on facts. She's like, for some reason, our greatest national security threat is climate change. And it's like, yeah, because no one's anywhere near our military capacity. Nowhere near it. We have an irresponsible, unethical amount of military funding. That's why we're so secure that our biggest threat is climate change. It kills more people than foreign war. What do you mean?
I think about the people who don't want you to have children because of the impact on the environment. Perhaps not everyone will make that connection.
Kamala Harris just announced a $6,000 child tax credit where the government will give you $6,000 for the first year of your baby's life. And she announced a $25,000 down payment assistance on a first-time home. How is that? Like, I was talking to my dad and I kind of put it together. I was like, it's almost like Kamala Harris is trying to combat the anti-family narrative specifically with her economic policy, but like nothing else. She doesn't have any like actual interest in uplifting, like no fucking $15 minimum wage federally. Like, can we please remember back in 2020 where that was what Joe Biden was running on, and that's what Hillary Clinton ran on in 2016? Like, are you gonna fucking look me dead in the eyes and tell me saying $15 minimum wage wouldn't be insanely popular? Like, how are we so behind right now economically? This is why people say she doesn't have any economic policy. I thought she was gonna say some shit like that last night. That's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for the big fucking popular shit, not this fucking we have to build the most lethal army shit. God damn. I feel like back in the day, conservatives would say of Kamala Harris, she's trying to bribe you to have children. That's unethical or something. Like, infinite money glitch. You just keep having children and live off the welfare state. That's like the shit they used to say. But now they're all about like family values. You have to have children. And they're convincing you not to have children because of climate change. Like, yeah, that in a lot of people's minds is a reason not to have kids, but it also goes into material conditions and economic factors as well. Like, if people had the economic means to actually protect themselves from the effects of of climate change, they demonstrably still have kids. Elon Musk has like fucking 5 million kids. He's a breeder because he has the means to do it and not have like any responsibility at all. Just, you know, he'll pay child support, but anyway.
But after spending time in the international space trying to protect life, I can tell you
This lady is such a
that
bozo.
this is part of their ultimate goal, to control people. Let me share a personal example of how
Like, having been in that international space, like you went to Canada. What do you mean? You went to Canada for the G7.
the left seeks to permeate every dimension of life through their skewed terminology and definition. When I arrived at USAID, I had a career employee ask me how many children I had. I thought it was a bit odd of a question, but to be kind, I answered and I said I had 3 children. And he actually said to me, "Oh wow, 1.5 too many for the environment." I smiled and I said very politely, if I could have 10 more children, I would. The policy...
Huh? That did not happen. 1.5 too many for the environment? Yeah, and then she got arrested and put in jail.
The book captures the essence of climate change. And I quote, "In the name of combating climate change, policies have been used to create an artificial energy scarcity that will require trillions of dollars in new investment, supported with taxpayer subsidies."
Which, this is such bullshit. So this is from Project 2025. Climate change policies have been used to create an artificial energy scarcity, which is bullshit, that will require trillions of dollars in new investment. I mean, the Green New Deal is trillions of dollars in new investment, but it's new investment in jobs, creating jobs, and training for those jobs, so people can have new clean energy jobs. They don't give them fucking lung cancer. It is so, like, unbelievably, like, a good idea for everyone, like, working class-wise, that it's nuts the Democratic Party hasn't even, like, come close to touching it. I mean, it makes sense. It's like a, like, 1% anti-capitalist bill. Like, there's not already a lobby for green energy to, like, make it happen. That's literally why. So, you know, whatever. Trillions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies. That's literally what they want to give to fossil fuels. That's what drill baby drill means. To address a problem the government created and special interests themselves created. That's literally the fossil fuel industry, but whatever.
To address
That's
a
fine.
problem
I love projection.
that government and special interests themselves have created. Page 364, end of quote. Population growth, environmental changes, and weather patterns have all been intertwined by the left. They take or even make up a term and create, extend, and alter the definition to validate whatever ideology or position they want to ingrain and convince others is good, when in reality it's not. Often, as you just heard, they are simply not coherent or logical.
They convince you that it's good, when in fact, it is not. They are not coherent or logical.
Remember, our intelligence community identified climate change as the #1 threat to America. So even if...
What would be the threat? Like China, Russia, AI, like those are just not threats directly to like the lives of American people. You know what I mean? Climate change is, Texas floods all the time and it kills people. Texas froze over too.
If you do not work at the Department of Energy, no matter where you work, because of the
California
Biden
wildfires as well.
administration's executive orders and policy priorities, you will have to look for climate change language and get rid of it.
Bethany, when you were talking about how the left
eliminate.
has co-opted so many words and weaponized so many words when it comes to abortion, and that's something that political appointees in the next administration are going to have to really look at, this idea that it's a right. There's many phrases that included rights. Is there other places where rights are used as a catch-all and they actually, it means something else?
Okay.
By rights, they actually mean not rights, I guess. I hate when the Democrats are always talking about giving people rights. They don't mean that. They mean something else, different. They mean killing babies, not rights. They mean wrongs.
Katie, that's a great question. And in fact, #3 is human rights. Human rights in border security. So rights, rights, rights. The left is always coming up with new rights. In the
And the more, the worse the country is. You could say the same thing about, I don't know, the founding fathers. They made a Bill of Rights. They're always coming up with more rights. Civil Rights Act, bullshit. Gay rights, no. No more rights, less rights.
Trump administration, we countered human rights with unalienable rights. The careers went absolutely crazy at USAID. But thankfully, President Trump had established a commission on unalienable rights at the State Department, and we would just point back to the commission. Sadly, our founding documents were not sufficient, but thankfully the commission was. The Department of State's Commission on Unalienable Rights was charged with providing the U.S. government with advice on human rights grounded in our nation's founding principles and the principles of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Why 1948, you hag? 1948, such a miserably racist time in American history. I hate these people. That's what they mean by make America great again. Bring it back to 1948.
Now I'm going to turn over border security to you, Katie, as it deals with legalese.
And we all know that border security is a major issue, and the differences between a conservative presidency and administration and the current administration couldn't be more stark than in this area. So getting the words very precise and correct is crucial. The left has co-opted language and definitions as it relates to immigration. Illegal
that's nuts, dude. That's nuts.
Immigration is one of the most devastating challenges America faces today.
That's literally what, Republicans came up with the term illegal alien. That's exactly weaponizing language against undocumented people. What do you mean?
When you factor in all of the secondary costs.
Conservatives are generally the reason you have to do this fucking rhetoric shit, so it's so funny that she is blaming it on the left when it's a symptom of having to navigate a very right-wing primed voter base because of our media. It's pretty astonishing. That's why we had to start calling it climate change, because there were senators that were coming into Congress with a snowball and being like, how global warming if I had the snow in my hands? So it's harder to make that point when it's called climate change. That's literally the reason. Obviously, it's more accurate to what's actually going on as well, but
and effects of illegal immigration, including illicit drug and human trafficking. The left knows the American people oppose illegal immigration and understands its effects. So they have
that's just a lie.
Years using language designed to both conflate illegal immigration and legal immigration, the latter of which most Americans support, and soften the idea that illegal immigration is, in fact,
Americans don't know shit about immigration. It's crazy.
It is a good bet that the left has focused group tested the language it uses to cover up the horrors of illegal immigration. For example, when describing illegal immigration, the left likes to use words and phrases like undocumented immigrants and migrants. These terms are designed to sound softer and take the edge off the fact that these people...
Yeah, it's supposed to not be racist and call them fucking aliens.
People are illegally in the United States. It is important to note that they specifically avoid using the word alien, which is the terminology used in federal law. To be clear, alien is not a negative or pejorative term. It is a legal term of art.
No, it's not. It's just a legal term, and we only ever use legal terms when talking about politics. Only. In the legal context, it's neutral. In the modern context, it is negative, obviously, but it's also dehumanizing, which is the point.
It simply means that an individual is not a citizen of a particular country. Language matters here for a lot of reasons, but primarily because citizens of the United States have rights that others...
I thought the left was all about rights.
Including foreign nationals...
Now you're talking about America
illegally
rights.
On
no gay rights, no trans rights, no civil rights. America rights, though, hag.
Our soil do not. If I had to guess, I would say that the left's attempt to wash away the term alien stems from their disdain of actual law, since they want to avoid discussion of what federal immigration law.
It's because I hate the law. That's why I don't call immigrants illegal aliens. Not because it sounds stupid and racist.
Actually requires, which is
I hate the law.
everything they refuse to do, and their interest in washing away the overall value of citizenship. Remember,
what is the value of citizenship? It's your fucking spawn point. There is no value of citizenship, you fucking white supremacist. Like, that's insane.
Citizenship
The
places
value.
a focus on nationality
Disgusting.
and sovereignty. The left has bought into the globalist vision of a borderless world, and their language choices reflect that. The left loves to say that illegal aliens are undocumented. Not only is that terminology not used anywhere in federal law, but it is clearly designed to soften the concept of illegality by making it seem like it's just a technicality.
I mean, it's good, because it is. What do you mean? No human being is illegal. They're trying to say it's illegal to be here. I disagree. America has always taken undocumented people. It's always just let people in. That's just how it's been. That's America. Just because there weren't Fox News cameras recording every single person crossing the border, you know, forever. It's just a new thing. All of a sudden, it's a new problem.
In other words, if you are undocumented, it makes it sound like you can be here legally, but you're missing a few pieces of bureaucratic paperwork.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's literally true. That is literally what being undocumented means. 100%.
That is simply not the case. If an alien has not gone through the appropriate process for obtaining a visa.
And that isn't paperwork. That's not bureaucratic paperwork. The process, that's I guess a fitness test, psychological test, power, I don't know, spice level.
To enter the United States or otherwise followed United States law to enter the United States, they are illegally here. Period. Hard stop. Calling.
And that is an arbitrary definition. What do you mean? It's like they're illegally here and they're a criminal. Elon Musk overstayed his visa. You want to retroactively deport his ass? I wish.
Illegal aliens, undocumented immigrants, is the intellectual equivalent of calling someone who breaks into your house in the middle of the night an undocumented homeowner.
Dude, that's an insane analogy. Someone crossing the border, that's not your fucking territory. That's not your land. That's nuts. Entitlement, bro. Disgusting. Also, that happens in Israel all the time. That happens in the West Bank. So, I don't want to fucking hear that shit from any Aryan conservative hag. No, I don't.
It is inaccurate, and it is designed to be inaccurate. The term migrants or migration are just as deceptive. The left likes to use migrants and migration, not only because it sounds gentle, but it also creates confusion. When people hear these terms, they know deep down that migration is seasonal and circular.
What?
They think of birds or butterflies. They fly south, they fly north, and so on. And
I don't think that at all. Is she implying that it's like people who say migrants think it's only temporary?
historically, we have had foreign nationals come into the United States for seasonal or agricultural work and then return to their home countries. It would be reasonable and accurate to refer to those individuals as migrant workers because they ultimately return home. But make no mistake, the current mass illegal immigration we are seeing as a result of the Biden administration's intentional actions is not migration, and these people are not migrants. It is an orchestrated invasion being led by the Biden administration in conjunction.
Dude, it's literally 1984. Like, an orchestrated invasion led by the Biden administration. Okay, you're right. They're not migrants. They're invaders. My bad. Excuse me. Invaders. Marauders. Barbarians.
With the Mexican cartels. The bottom line is,
yeah, of course, in conjunction with the Mexican cartels, Joe Biden's best friends.
We win or lose political fights based on language. If you let the other side of the debate set the terms of the debate, you've already lost. In the context of immigration specifically, we have to start using more accurate language to describe what is going on and pegging our language to existing law. If we can take back
Wait, pegging?
start using more accurate language to describe what is going on and pegging our language to existing law.
Nice.
If we can take back the language here and elsewhere, we will win more of these fights. So Bethany, I mean, these are some great examples.
Bethany.
And another one that comes to my mind that has been
No, she's anti-sex ed. She doesn't know what pegging means.
co-opted by the left.
And doesn't want anyone else to ever learn either.
Is gender. And
She begging
I
on
know
my
you
law
have so
until
much
he becomes super racist.
experience in the history of your professional life in
Wait,
dealing
what?
with this. Where are we today on this issue and the language and the words and the definitions? Let's talk about
The language and the words and the definitions of those words.
the word gender. The word gender
go.
is no longer a polite way to refer to biological sex, male or female. The word now is completely toxic. It's no longer being used to mean male or female, but now how people identify, which is where we get this idea of gender identity.
Always has
Katie,
been.
did you know that there are between 72 and 1,000 different kinds of gender?
No way. 72 to 1,000? One joke? No, this isn't a joke, chat. This isn't a comedy show. This is a training video. I don't think this is a joke.
We should never use the word gender as
No, I literally think she's serious. Name 4.
conservatives. It's not specific and it's nonsensical. Instead, use the word sex or biological sex or male and female. And I don't care where you are in the administration, you will deal with the word gender. Speaking of sex, the next phrase that we're going to talk about is sex assigned at birth. Now, I just told you to use the word sex, and you may think that sex assigned at birth, that sounds
Sexo.
great. Well, actually, it's not.
Oh,
It's the left's
that's
attempt
woke.
to change
Yes.
biological fact and to try to normalize their belief
That's
that
funny.
biological sex can change. Unfortunately, many folks, including solid conservatives,
Yeah, it's also used for intersex people, but those don't exist. I'm sorry, biological sex literally can change though.
have accepted this and don't understand the danger in using this term. In fact, some conservatives have even taken this term and changed it slightly, gender as revealed at birth. The
There's
left
too few intersex people to care. What's funny is that there's more intersex people than there are gingers in America. She is rarer than an intersex person, but you don't fucking see it because it's none of your business.
left is infiltrating our conservative organizations, Christian
Yeah,
schools,
when are we
and even
legislating against gingers?
in churches. We must always be on guard. And when a new term is introduced, ask, what is the genesis for this new term and why was it introduced?
Assign ginger at
If you
birth.
see the term
AGAB.
sex assigned at birth, delete it and replace it with biological
Delete
sex.
it.
The next
Yeah, this is talking about writing legislation, which the Heritage Foundation does, by the way. Writing legislation, or just like communications in general, but it's for legislation.
issue under gender is pronouns. Don't
go.
fall into the progressive left's trap in regard to pronouns. Don't use them in email signature blocks, on LinkedIn.
You don't
and
have
absolutely
pronouns.
Do not ask people what their pronouns are on your first day on the job. When I was at USAID, managers were giving training and were told that when they have new staff or have a staff meeting,
Government mandated transphobia. That's awesome.
they should go around the room and ask everyone what their pronouns are. Katie, if that happened to you, what would you do?
I would kill myself, Bethany. I would sacrifice myself for Donald Trump. I would self-immolate in protest. like a Tibetan monk.
I think political appointees, Bethany, great question, need to expect that they are going to be tested by career staff the day they walk in. So that question, every political appointee should be prepared to deal with and answer, whether it's in a training. I don't think it'll take that long. It probably will be the first couple days on the job. So
She didn't
a
answer the
political
question.
appointee
She didn't say what she would do if she was in that situation.
is empowered. They are empowered because they are absolutely put in the position, whatever level it is, in order to implement
She just started
the
talking.
president's agenda.
Okay.
And that is the business of a political appointee and should be the business of all federal employees. So the answer is simple. We're here to implement the president's priorities and agenda. We are not here to discuss pronouns.
The next topic.
Oh, that's what she would say if she was asked. She would go over all that fucking lame shit.
Is gender affirming care. Gender affirming care and what the Biden administration is promoting is absolutely infuriating, especially as for parents. We need to be protecting our children from these harmful, sterilizing puberty blockers.
Here's my theory. Do you think it's like a good excuse for a conservative parent to feel like a good parent? Because protecting your kid from becoming trans, if they're cis, is the easiest thing in the world. You just don't do anything. So like, do they automatically feel like, oh, well, I'm protecting my kids by being super transphobic and like posting all the time or something? Like, what is the actual protection that you're doing? Also, puberty blockers are not sterilizing. Yeah, that's just a lie. Protecting themselves from the woke left. Yeah, but like how? By just being like bigoted?
Cross-sex hormones and permanent genital mutilation. That's what...
That does not happen to children. Just doesn't. It never happens. I'm so like disgusted by this.
Gender affirming care is. Not care at all.
I mean, we just watched the Lad Bible clip. I'll play it again.
Morally right to perform this type of surgery? I was waiting for this question. It always comes up.
He said, is it morally right to perform this kind of surgery? This is a gender surgeon.
Of course it is. These are patients who experience an
Woke
immense
surgeon.
level of distress. If you don't operate on them, we think about 1 in 5 will commit suicide. Well, don't operate on them. If you don't offer them
20%.
appropriate support, counselling, and in
1
the
in
end
5 is
surgery.
20%.
So the death rate's about the same as anorexia nervosa. We're going to stop treating anorexics? Don't think so.
I don't think so. No, I don't. We're going to stop treating anorexics? Yeah, no, we're not fucking going to do that, no. Wow.
The idea that gender is fluid is evil, and it is a major initiative of the Biden administration. It's layered into each and every office, document, task force, and funding priority.
Okay, this is paranoia. This is brain disease, dude. This is RFK brainworm in there controlling you, making you transphobic.
Perhaps most commonly known are the changes to Title IX, giving institutions, schools
This has been
control
blocked,
over
by the way.
children and their gender preference, working against parents.
It just protects the kids, man. The Protect the Kids party wants their kids to be outed so they can beat the fuck out of them when they find out they're gay. Like, making a teacher a mandated outer of a child betrays their relationship entirely. It will make kids permanently unsafe. That's not how schools should be.
Mandating boys compete against girls. This is all done with words. Words matter. Change the words, change the culture.
Like,
Now,
that's how you get kids homeless. That's how you get homeless high schoolers, is out the fucking queer kid to his homophobic family. It's really fucked up. And then they die in a lot of cases.
Katie, I know that you've written several wonderful pieces on equity and you've done a lot of research on this. And the Biden administration has infiltrated equity into everything. What are your
DEI,
thoughts
baby.
on equity for the next administration?
Well, it's
Well,
a
not the
little
diversity part, just
heart-stopping,
the equity and inclusion.
Bethany, and it's going to take a lot to rewind where we are right now with this, with the left's definition of equity and how that's layered into all federal government documents. Roger Severino states
What's
it
your
perfectly
definition? What's
in
the
the
difference?
Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership book. Quote, under President Biden, the mission has shifted from promoting equity in everything we do, end quote, for the sake of, quote, populations sharing a particular characteristic, including race, sexuality, gender identification, ethnicity, and a host of other categories, end quote.
Promoting it.
Equity no longer means all men are created equal, the cornerstone of our U.S. Constitution, but rather now mandates the government to dispense with unequal treatment in order to achieve what they believe to be equal outcomes. This creates divisiveness, not equality.
Divisiveness is not the opposite of equality. Divisiveness is a political buzzword used to mean like liberals are mad. Divisive. It's like, it's nothing. Are we talking about equity or equality? It doesn't matter. Same thing.
There is no unification under these principles.
To these people, same thing.
It is more of a competition of what class is more of a victim. So
is that how the world is? Like, what is the material example of this? This is just vibes.
That particular class can receive the preferential treatment being handed out and mandated by the Biden administration. It's important to note that the very first executive order that President Biden signed just moments after his inauguration on January 20th of 2021 had to do with equity. The left applauded as Biden announced his #1 priority, which is advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities throughout the federal government.
That still means like poor white communities too. Does she not know that?
As part of that executive order, within 90 days, every single agency had to file an equity action plan with the White House. If you want to see or view what you will be up against, take a look at those plans. They're all online under the Office of Management and Budget. Since that time, 9 more executive orders have been executed by the Biden administration
that have about diversity, or I'm sorry, equity.
Equity.
About
the
it.
latest to date is to further advance racial equity. This entails
the latest bill is to further, the latest to date is to further advance racial equity. God, the right doesn't know how to construct sentences. I've done this with Ben Shapiro before. Sometimes you just like slow down what they're saying and say it out loud and you're like, that doesn't mean anything.
New positions and responsibilities to be embedded into every single agency and office in the federal government. And there is also a directive that all funding that is given out by the federal government prioritize unequal treatment of the American people. The noxious...
It's so aspecific. It's so vague. Like, you're prioritizing unequal treatment. How?
All funding that is given out by the federal government prioritize unequal treatment of the American people. The noxious tenets of critical race theory and gender ideology should be excised from curriculum in every single public school in this country.
So Katie, this is a lot to absorb.
It's like they cut her off. Like, where did that even come from? We weren't talking about public schools, were we?
Every single agency and office in the federal government. And there is also a directive.
Oh, like brain aneurysm.
All funding that is given out by the federal government prioritize unequal treatment of the American people. The noxious tenets of critical race theory and gender ideology should be excised from curriculum in every single public school in this country.
So Katie, this is a lot to absorb.
Yeah, and you can't teach wokeness in public schools. Just to close out, in conclusion, we need to eradicate wokeness from our public schools.
You suggest that we tackle the problem. I know you were the head of a grant office at DOJ and you had a lot of paperwork. What are your suggestions?
Well, I found that developing a process for each type of document was...
8Cube, your TTS didn't work, and I'm glad it didn't, because when you do all caps, it spells each letter in Italian, and it would have been a huge mess. It was too long. We just got saved from 9/11.
Crucial to reversing the words and definitions from the Obama administration. Here's an overall strategy to implement.
It would have been better than this.
First, look for any OMB, that's the Office of Management and Budget, White House Office of Management and Budget, guidance. You'll want to instruct career employees that you, whatever level you are, you want to be informed of all OMB guidance and how it is being implemented internally. Oftentimes, careers will just get an OMB circular or an OMB advice and then they just go along and they either ignore it or they don't put it in. You want to be involved in the process. You want to say, every single thing that comes in, I want to make sure that it is actually being implemented. This can easily be handled at the senior advisor or
How much
even
did they pay her for this? I wonder if she even got paid.
special assistant level.
Whoa. Oh, they didn't read this. Instruct career employees. All right, great.
The second thing you need to do, and quickly, are look at guidance documents. Now, I've talked about this in other trainings.
This is the first
Guidance
one.
documents are simply a federal career employee's interpretation of a statute, of an appropriation given by Congress, of a rule or regulation, and how it's going to be implemented. A guidance document is not binding. It is simply, in some ways, just their opinion. The problem with a guidance document is that it has a tremendous amount of authority. Because if you are looking to an agency to find out what they're looking for your grant, or how your grant program will be implemented, or what rules they have around it, you're going to look at those guidance documents. They end up with a tremendous amount of authority. It really ends up being the career's
1.5.
agenda being forced onto the American people. A court is the only real institution that can give us a definitive interpretation of any kind of grant program, appropriation, or rule. So most likely, the Office of Management and Budget will come out very quickly with a plan to take down all the guidance documents that are currently up that reflect the Biden administration's agenda. So you'll first want to look at that process.
Okay, so look at them. Not binding. OMB Canon should come out with a plan. It's not really training you on how to do anything. This is a terrible video. I haven't learned anything. Just go look at the guidance documents, I guess. How to identify and replace misguiding language. OMB should come out with a plan to do it. Okay, that's a good plan. Sit around and wait.
The second thing you're going to want to do, sort of the second layer, is to absolutely look at things that may not appear to be guidance documents, but are. For instance, one of the documents on our website was supposedly done by a Rutgers, professor, and so it looked like it wasn't actually career guidance. But when you really dug into the document, it was not part of any kind of grant program, and it really was just a career who asked a whole bunch of questions, and a Rutgers professor said yes. So it really, in the end, was a guidance document, and we brought it down. Another really frightening example when I was running the Office on Violence Against Women was a provision in the Violence Against Women Act about gender identity. And if you identified as a woman and you showed up at a woman's domestic violence shelter, you had to be accommodated. There were lawsuits, of course, about this as predators used that in order to gain entry into a place where there were vulnerable women. Seemed to me to be exactly opposite of, the intention. Yeah, the intention of the Violence Against Women Act. In any event,
That's insane.
It was directed toward just the Office on Violence Against Women programs. It was in the Violence Against Women Act. But in the Obama administration, the entire grant-making component of the Office of Justice Programs, which I later went on to run, the head of that office actually wrote a guidance document that said that the provision in the Violence Against Women Act regarding to gender identity was intended to apply to every single DOJ grant program, that it wasn't limited to the Office on Violence Against Women. There was absolutely no indication that this was true, but you can see that just by getting that particular legislation passed and the way that the careers then interpreted it created a complete change in culture across the Department of Justice. The next step will be to read every single executive order. I would suggest that, starting with an assistant, a special assistant, a senior advisor, that you get every single executive order and put it in a binder and have that binder for the principal and make sure that it's flagged for them. There will be a lot of executive orders that come out, and some of them actually, and know this, repeal other executive orders. So you need to then pull the executive orders that are being repealed so you are very clear about what needs to be redacted. Now let's go back to that OMB tip.
And so they're telling you to redact all language regarding gender and wokeism and all that.
That I gave. And just like that, you need to be part of the process that the careers are using to implement executive orders. During the Trump administration, I can tell you that executive orders were signed, fully executed, where all the guidance was given. You gave an example of this, Bethany, to our office, and I later found out that it was just simply ignored. And so you need to be part of the process that the careers are using to implement executive orders. During the Trump administration, I can tell you that executive orders were signed, fully executed, where all the guidance was given. You gave an example of this, Bethany, to our office, and I later found out that it was just simply ignored. It's not worth, the price of the paper it's written on if your careers are not implementing what the president wanted.
Read every single one. Be part of the process.
I think you can expect that equity and all of the equity executive orders under Biden will be repealed early in the next administration. This is going to require a very detailed plan to execute the eradication of the dictates in the equity orders. For instance, there's a gender advisor position created by one of these executive orders. That position has to be eradicated, as well as all the task forces, the removal of all the equity plans from all the websites, and a complete rework of the language.
Yeah, these are like the people that take away like gender from the official like CDC website. You know what I mean? Like these are the guys that are trying to do that job. It's like the most like pointless, nothing, like fake job, bureaucratic busy work, but it's for the purposes of outright fascism. It's so nasty. Who to vote for then? Like I understand the sentiment, but it's either her or Trump. She's vastly better than him. Not voting for her doesn't do any good. I mean, not voting for her doesn't necessitate. I mean, I'm a California voter, so it doesn't matter either way, but not voting for her doesn't translate to a vote for Trump. That's not how it works. But, the most I can do is make my grievances known in my political analysis because, my takes are just like how I feel. I don't think it's right to be a war hawk. I also think it's a losing position. My criticisms are mainly about putting the election at risk for no reason, backing away from important policy that's really popular, and following through on what is already creating a lot of momentum in her campaign rather than taking a backstep and moderating her position for this, like, fake moderate Democrat that doesn't exist. Literally, Kamala Harris could come out tomorrow and like say, I'm going to tax corporations 80%. What the fuck do you think your liberal mom is going to do? Vote for Donald Trump? Fuck no. They're going to use that same shit. They're going to be saying that same shit. You never hear that shit to moderates. You always hear that shit to people who want justice, to people who want fucking equity or who want an end to the fucking genocide. It's ridiculous. You never hear like moderates being the ones to be like told, what do you want Donald Trump to win? You're trying to pull Kamala Harris to the right economically and you want Trump to win because that's demonstrably unpopular. 80% corporate tax rate. What are you gonna do? Fucking Jake Tapper would be pissed. George Slopadopoulos. There'd be a meltdown in the liberal media. What are they gonna do? Vote for Trump? Ridiculous. It's mainly for donors. If we're being real, it's appealing to the donors that like the moderate policy.
In internal and external policy documents and grant applications, which leads me to grants and rules and regulations.
Headshot.
Well, grant and grant programs are funded with your federal tax dollars, and they are appropriated by Congress.
Don't be rude.
You are told how much money you have for what particular program. And typically your appropriations language will just give a very brief description of the program. And that's the direction that Congress has given the agency. Every single grant has conditions. You want to think of this like a carrot and a stick. You can have your federal money in order to support your program,
If
but
you're
only
not
if you
woke.
agree to certain conditions, which are built into the grants.
Yeah, if you don't have any mentions of gender in your documents.
When I began at the Office on Violence Against Women, our grant applications were 75 to 110 pages long. Pages and pages of guidance that had no statutory or congressional counterpart, and tons of conditions. The conditions that you would need in order to receive the money, and you would need to continue to live with those conditions throughout the time of your grant. For instance, to receive grant money, certain programs would have to show a partnership with an LGBTQ support group. There was no language in the appropriation for that grant that an LGBTQ sub-grantee was mandated. The career said it was best practices, and it was an Obama administration priority. This condition on many grants funded a lot of LGBTQ organizations. So we removed that language and we removed those conditions as we wrote the grants moving forward.
Yeah, cool. So you admit that the ones that require an LGBT member end up being LGBT organizations because that makes sense. And so you're like, and we cut funding for that qualification. So we cut funding for LGBT organizations in Congress or whatever. Like, great, cool, awesome.
Rules and regulations also need ultimate political sign-off and a tremendous amount of political involvement. Your careers may draft the initial documents, the rules and regulations, but there should be multiple political edits on any final proposed rule or regulation. The left is excellent about holding up process. So you want to expect and prepare for thousands of comments coming from tons of left-supported groups on any rule that you put up. So expect that and have a plan to deal with those thousands, tens of thousands of comments. In order to move the president's agenda, if you are prepared to deal with the comments that are coming in, then you aren't going to let them delay the rule because they have to be responded to, each one of the comments. The careers will want to follow the system that's currently in place for handling comments or conditions or how grants are written. You are empowered as a political appointee to adjust these processes as long as you are meeting all legal requirements. So you may have to deal with pushback, but really look at your process and change it.
Okay, great.
A tip here, in addition to the sheer volume of guidance and conditions
URL
to
MX
grants
Convincing Points TBH.
and explanations of proposed rules, is to ask careers to explain a grant program or the need for a rule in 2 sentences. It is astonishing how difficult it is for a career who works in the policy or grant space to actually accomplish this. And finally, use your common sense.
Great.
Even if you see something that isn't directly
No,
addressed
last point, guys. Use your common sense.
by an executive order or an OMB circular
We're so
or directed by your
close.
agency head, you want to use your common sense to redact the words and definitions which are weakening our nation. As we have discussed, certain words and phrases used together have hidden definitions. A really good example is social emotional learning. That's actually the new buzzword for CRT, or critical race theory.
What?
Here's a tip. When you see phrases,
What was the buzzword?
a good example is social emotional learning.
Social emotional learning is a buzzword? First of all, that's 3 words.
That's actually the new buzzword for CRT, or critical race theory. Here's a tip. When you see phrases, any phrase like this, one that sounds innocuous, ask your careers to identify the origin of that phrase. Where did it come from? Why are you using that phrase particularly? What does it mean based on the
And
original
if it comes from the Bible, that means it's good.
intent of those words? And then I would highly recommend you start your own research. As a last note,
Yeah, these are the homeschooling Andes, by the way. I pray for their children. They're so stupid. I think anyone who advocates for homeschool should be, like, checked in the head. They should be checked out. They should be investigated in their brain. Someone should go into their brain and figure it out. Figure out what's wrong with it. You guys see what I'm saying here? It's like brain investigated.
to read a lot of documents. Know how your careers are implementing the president's executive orders, OMB directives, and be very involved in that process. I can't stress enough the need to control all documents. Create a system where nothing goes out, nothing is published, nothing is put on your website without review by a delegated political or the principal of any office.
This is straight up like 1984 shit, I feel like. You have to have the political overseers review your document to examine it for woke. Make sure you do this.
Ask lots of questions and do not make assumptions. And finally, if a career employee rushes in and says it is an emergency, and I think a lot of people who are an assistant, chief of staff, maybe senior advisor or special assistants are going to have careers just descending on them, talking about how it's an emergency that the principal sign something. That's a red flag. Right away, it's a red flag. By the time you get into your position, you will realize that the government moves very, very slowly.
Yeah, nothing is actually an emergency. Nothing's ever an emergency. If someone says that it's an emergency, that's a red flag. You need to stall the government.
Think about your clearance process and how long that took. These documents need to be read even more carefully. If a career thinks they can push you to sign something by giving it to you at the very last minute, that will become the norm, and it will hinder your ability to actually go through a process, read things, edit
yeah, the government moves slow, so create more gridlock. Move slower.
things and make sure that they are completely in line with the president's priorities and agenda. The president's agenda will be in peril from your office if you allow this emergency kind of process.
Katie, that was great. Thank you for taking us through that process.
Thank you, LED
Do you
light.
see? The monster is in the attic, and it is layered in virtually every document in the federal government.
So
Grant
delirious.
applications, rules, regulations, internal and external policy documents, guidance documents, tweets, speeches, and panels. Every one of these phrases or words that are not corrected by being redacted or rephrased is a failure of the presidency. As the Heritage Foundation's president, Dr. Kevin Roberts, boldly and courageously states in the Mandate for Leadership, the next conservative president must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, SOGI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI.
Sexual orientation, that's interesting. Wow, where'd that come from? That's interesting.
Gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness,
Soggy.
gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights.
We're deleting the term abortion and regulation? Wait, no. We're deleting all the terms related to abortion. That's just like, what do you mean? Like, what? That's like an important thing.
Out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant regulations, and piece of legislation that exists. And the next
so
conservative president will only be able to do so with your help. Are you up for this challenge? We think you are.
Dude, what is she doing with her hands? Are you up for this challenge? Dude, these are literally cyborgs.
Together, let's conquer the monsters in Uncle Sam's attic.
This is freakish. Yeah, the left wants to control your language and then fucking goes in depth for an hour about what words you're supposed to be deleting from legislation. Like, they're the ones talking about erasing these terms permanently from all grants and federal like applications and shit. Holy shit, that was rough. Okay, it's more unhinged than I ever thought.